Sally's going to explain why on my Sunday, where I was going to doze in the Barca Lounger in the lazy play all afternoon, that we are driving from here all the way back down to where we met up in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Where we met up this season, not where we met up originally.
Right. And it says it's 45 miles, probably well over an hour away, I would say.
So, my first question for you, Rob, is,
yes,
why would the fact that it's Sunday in your Barca Lounger be any different than Monday through Saturday?
Sunday still has a feel to it.
Okay.
Me.
All right, fair enough.
I rarely do stuff on Sundays.
Okay. I rarely do stuff on Sundays either. But here's what I decided to do today. Since my new exterior door lock came in, I decided I was going to install it. And first I walked over to Rob's because I don't have any signal, so I could watch the video for the installation instructions, and then I walked back and started the install. And everything was going fine until I attempted to fit the new exterior latch and discovered that the opening wasn't big enough. So the first thing I'm thinking, what do I have for tools? And I couldn't think of anything. So I called Rob, and he came over with a little mini hacksaw, which is actually a cool tool, but as we know now, probably not the right tool for this job.
No.
But Donna, who was camped right next to me, said, well, what about that toenail grinder you got for Kit? That's a rotary tool.
It is, isn't it?
It is. And it worked really well, taking out the fiberglass and Luan plywood portions that needed to be removed. But there's also a piece of metal that has to be relieved. I want to get safety glasses too while we're there.
Okay.
Speaking of metal, there's a piece of metal that needs to be relieved. And the toenail cutter wasn't really capable of doing the metal. I did a fine job on the fiberglass and Luan, though. I was quite surprised.
You took a little paint off the metal.
A little bit, yeah. So we got some bare metal showing.
And the metal is, I don't know, a couple millimeters by a couple millimeters. It's not a big
it's not huge
area, but it's enough to prevent that unit from going in.
Yeah, so Rob, being the gracious guy that he is, offered to take me to Harbor Freight. Actually, I called Ace Hardware up in Angel Fire first. And I really want a cordless Dremel tool. If I'm going to have to buy something, I want cordless. I don't want corded, because it's just too hard to work around a cord many times, and it often won't end up in the place where you need it to be and all that kind of stuff. So to me, it just made more sense to get a cordless one. And truthfully, I mean, worst case scenario, I could just live with the existing lock. The bolt portion still works, just the latch doesn't, so I don't have a complete lock set working. But as with all new items, once you got it, you really want it done.
Right.
But
if you're in this lifestyle and you're in Guadalupe, New Mexico, your choices are limited.
Yeah.
And it's often the case. If you're going to be doing this lifestyle in places that are amazing and beautiful and exciting,
don't have problems.
This is how the problems usually get solved.
And I mean, I super appreciate the fact that Rob is willing to do this drive with us, don't you, Kit? Are you enjoying another day in the truck? Sitting in the AC? Is that nice? Is that nice for the kidster? I super appreciate that. If I were by myself, I wouldn't be doing this, because I would have to break camp, drive someplace for a pretty long distance, get the thing I need. Although if I ended up doing that, I would probably sit in the parking lot to make sure I could get the job done before I left. So that I would have access to potentially more tools or whatever.
Here's an interesting juxtaposition of her class 3 or class C in my travel trailer. I love it that I can jump in this car like this, but when I sit inside her
house,
it's It's way more comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other way to say that. It's way more comfortable. As I can't have guests in my house.
No, I've come in and sat on your bed before.
And that's very uncomfortable. It's high off the ground. It's not comfortable sitting on my bed. But you could seat 4 people comfortably in Sally's class seat.
And even 5. I can squeeze 5 in if necessary. I've had 4 in for a full dinner before.
But you pay a price.
Yes.
For that, you pay a price.
And my choice has been, at least so far, it might change at some point in the future, but I don't want to have a toad. I don't want to have a vehicle that I'm dragging behind me everywhere. And one of the things that I've been learning over this summer, and I'm sorry, I know you guys really like to see the view, but we could just lay this over one of the other times we've driven this and give them both.
Yeah, I mean, there's been enough driving videos.
So now you're getting a talking head where you can hardly see us, but that's okay. One of the things that I have learned over the past, 8 or 9 months that Donna and I have been mostly traveling together.
Both of you have Class
Both
Cs
of us, yeah,
without
and no toads.
No toad. And what's a toad?
A toad, TOAD, is the thing that you tow, TOW, behind your Class C or Class A, so that you have a vehicle that you can run around with when you get to a destination.
Right, and that's got its own complexities.
Lots of them.
Like, there are certain vehicles that are towable in all 4 wheels.
Flat tow.
It's called flat tow, and only certain vehicles can you do that. And others, you would have to put either on a half or full trailer.
Yep.
And I won't say you cannot back up, but your backup options are extremely limited.
Yeah, you can back up if you're on a dolly, a half trailer, just the front wheels are on the dolly, and you can back up if you're on a regular trailer. But, all of those things add a whole level of complexity that I don't really want in my life at this point. At this point. It could change in the future. So part of what I've learned over the last 7, 8, 9 months, and I had never done this before, is Donna and I have often just been going to a camp and sitting for 2 weeks without moving. We don't go anywhere until it's time to leave. And then we'll spend, depending on what our next destination is and what things we want to explore, we'll spend 1 to 3 days typically moving from one place to the next, even if the next place is only an hour away. But if there's stuff we want to see and we need to get groceries and we need to do laundry and all that stuff, we'll spend a couple of days doing that and then get to our next destination and stay there for 2 weeks.
And that's not for me.
No.
I generally go someplace in my vehicle every day that I'm in camp. It's a rare day that I don't go anywhere. And so this is stuff that you
need to
think about if you're contemplating doing this, is how important, what are the trade-offs and what's important to me.
Yeah.
And I think that if I could get a rig just like Sally's, and I could get a lightweight tow vehicle, a toad, I would probably do that instead of what I have. Because it's probably going to be just as long, especially if I get a small vehicle. Because I'm like probably 40 feet towing my trailer.
And I'm 28 without.
So, you could get, with a small vehicle, you could get probably right at about 40.
Mm-hmm. And I've got my eyes out for a Geo Tracker or a Suzuki Samurai.
Nomadic Fanatic just sold these.
I know. Well, he bought one where the air conditioning wasn't working. It's like, really? If you want air conditioning, make sure it's working before you commit to buying it.
Well, and most of them don't come with air conditioning.
Right.
It's rare.
Yeah. I'd want one with air conditioning.
Yeah, so would I.
But, and I don't know what his other reasons were, because I'm pretty sure that you can completely retrofit an AC. In fact, I know you can.
I think he even talked about that. It's like $1,000 you can do a new one or something.
Which doesn't seem all that awful to me once you've got a vehicle that's otherwise good.
It's happened because I love you, Eric.
Uh-huh.
I know you're not listening, but you're impulsive, even more so than me.
Yes.
Which is saying something.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm sure that watching me, grind and stop and test fit and grind and stop and test fit half a dozen times made you crazy. You probably would have just ground pretty much as far as you thought you could go and then test fitted.
Probably,
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm not quite that bad. I understand why it would be a good idea to go slowly on that, because you can't take it back if you go too far.
Right.
What's impulsive is I'm very likely going to buy the same tool that you are.
Yep.
Because
But it's not impulsive because you already understand why you want it.
I understand that there are many things on my rig where it would be a good idea to have a grinder. And I used to have one, and it's gone now.
Yeah, I used
sticks and bricks days.
Well,
I
and
used to have a lot of tools.
I did too, and I probably am wishing at this point that I had. Oh, wait a minute. When I was there at the end of February and putting the house on the market, if I had thought of it, I could have just picked this up and brought it with me. But I didn't think of it. I decided to just sell. I sold all the rest of the tools that I left at the house because I hadn't been using them for 2.5 years, so I figured I probably didn't need them. Oops.
So while we got this going on this topic, is there anything else? Our full-time RV related? I did a video, if you guys haven't seen it, on doing full-time RV on Social Security on the average of $1,700 a month, which has been my most successful video in quite a while. People wonder about finances, and they wonder about what kind of rig. There was someone that said, "Oh, this is terrible because I hear prices in retirement RV resorts are skyrocketing and people are out on the street," and just like this pretty dramatic thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, if for you to think that, you're probably in an urban area.
Yep.
Because RV resort prices are not skyrocketing. They're still, you can find very reasonable, if you want to be in an RV park or resort, you can still find very reasonable rates outside large urban areas. And when I say reasonable, I mean well under $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
And that's well under the average rent across the whole country.
Yeah.
So you like my preferred RV resort with my membership that cost me $2,500, and I pay, what do I pay annual dues, like $325, I think. When I go there with utilities and everything, I'm paying less than $500 a month. Tell me where you're going to live with electric and sewer and water included for less than that.
Right.
The answer is nowhere.
Yes.
Yeah. And if that's too much for you, you have alternatives. You can do, as I suggested in the video, I put 0 for rent, because you can, and many people do, that are on a small fixed income. They do BLM and National Forestry land, and they move every 2 weeks. And between you and me and the viewers, there are places where you can stay longer than 2 weeks, where it's accepted and you won't get kicked out. Well, I really love RV resorts like that. You can get a camp hosting job at a fancy resort.
Do they hire a camp house?
Yeah, they usually pay them plus give them this.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's camp hosting. You don't get paid, but you get a sometimes free full hookup, sometimes just water and electric, in national parks and state parks, where somewhere between 20 and 30 hours a week work, you live basically for free. And I've done that. I did that at the Army Corps of Engineers campground in North Idaho in the summer of 2021. And my schedule was like 4 days on, 4 days off, rotating. So it was a good summer, and it was a good way to save a lot of money. So you can do that. The other one that I haven't done, but I heard about, it's big in Texas, in Louisiana and Oklahoma, is guard gates.
Yes.
And
I'm thinking about that.
It basically, most of them require 2 people. They don't hire single people,
Yes,
because it's
most do.
It's 24 hours, and somebody always has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And every video that I've seen of couples doing it doesn't look like it's a good deal to me at all. I mean, it is a way to accumulate money. It's like they're paying you fairly well. I don't know. I can't think right now what the average is, but you can, put it together a few $1,000s in a month doing it. But boy,
they're usually in kind of brutal locations too.
Yeah, they're in often brutal locations, and the trucks really never stop.
And again, it depends on the operation. I've got a couple that I'm friends with that gate guard in the summertime, and there's actually a third person that works. They work 8-hour shifts.
That must be a really busy one.
Yeah, it must be, but yeah, they work 8-hour shifts.
And you have to not only do a criminal records fingerprint check, you have to take a course and be licensed as a guard. At least in Texas, you do. And that it's online, but it costs money and it costs time.
And those are all things for people that want to or feel like they need to make money. But, and you said the average Social Security is like $1,745?
$1,700 and change.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people that's well above average. But I started keeping track a month or two before I decided to sell my house, trying to winnow out what are my household related expenses versus my nomad related expenses. And pretty consistently, I seem to be running under $1,200 a month without even trying.
What are you doing back there,
What
Dottie?
are you doing back there, Dottie? You okay? She's sitting up a little. And under $1,200 a month is, even if you need to supplement, even if you need to work a little bit, you don't have to work a whole lot to be able to meet that if you're on a lower end Social Security. I mean, I'm not on any Social Security at all at this point because I'm holding out until I hit age 70. And that's part of the reason that I'm paying attention to what I'm spending, because I've got money in savings that I want to last until I hit age 70.
So on Social Security, I think the video showed you could do it on $1,700. Not a lot of luxuries, but you could do it. But there are lots of ways to make money online that you can. If you're taking Social Security, you can earn up to $20,000 in salary without your Social Security being affected. Now, when you do that, you run the risk of your Social Security, part of it becoming taxable at a certain level. But, let's say you're somewhere between let's say your Social Security, you're taking it at 62, it's only $1,200. That's, the little budget that I did, that would barely scrape you by. And I don't think few people are comfortable just barely scraping by. You got to be careful with the online jobs because there's a lot of scams out there. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. But there are lots of opportunities out there, and just be careful looking for them. Now, there's a YouTuber, is it Creativity RV, that has the book?
Yeah, she wrote the book, How to Earn from Home While You Roam.
And it's on Amazon, and she updates the version constantly.
Buy the Kindle version because she updates it annually.
And I bought that, and I, not just out of curiosity, and to me, it's the most legit form of that in one place that I've found.
I agree. And while we're talking about that, make sure you get the book written by Robin Barrett and check it really carefully because a whole bunch of scammers have been scamming her book.
Why don't I put a link to her?
Yeah,
book
put a link in. That would be great.
In the description. We're coming into Mora now, which you guys have seen too many times.
Crossing the Mora River.
We're just passing through on our way to Las Vegas. Another 28 miles. But that's a really, really good resource, and I doubt she has anything in there that isn't reputable.
And she recently, like within the last few months, did a couple of interview videos with a viewer of hers who had taken the book, and I think she said she was generating about $3,000 a month without working too hard at it. So,
right, and I remember her saying, people were saying, "Oh, that's phony," or.
But yeah, because the gal didn't want to show her face in the first interview.
Right, but
you know,
it clearly was not phony.
No, definitely not phony.
You know, I earn money, but I do it through, I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm able to do sessions over the internet. It's funny, when I had a private practice before COVID, I could do online sessions. I'd love to. No one would do it. No one was interested.
And then
now after COVID, no one's interested in person.
Yeah.
No one wants to go to the office anymore.
Well, it's much easier to be able to do a Zoom call in your pajama bottoms.
You know, people talk a lot about the beet harvest and Amazon. That's pretty hard work. Physical work, both those things. If you're not prepared for that, I mean, I know it's a relatively short period of time, but it's pretty brutal work. And if you're older, the risk of injury,
pretty high.
I think it's pretty high. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for older folks. Younger folks, have at it. Make that money. The beet harvest confused me when I first heard about it.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, you're not picking beets or anything.
Right.
You're directing traffic and picking up strays and stuff like that. But what I didn't realize is, why are beets... is there an epidemic of eating beets that I'm unaware of? And it's not.
Sugar.
It's a shortage of sugar. I did not know that. Do you know something about... You probably know about nutrition and connected to beet sugar.
Beet sugar is cheap. Cane sugar is in some ways better, in other ways, I mean, you know, sugar's sugar. And the less sugar we have in our diets, the better overall. But there's nothing inherently bad about beet sugar. And beets are easy to grow. Cane sugar needs a different environment. That's why so much of it is grown in Hawaii. We don't have that kind of environment in the continental United States, so it's easier to produce beets.
Speaking of nutrition, and whether there was studies that came out in the 60s that said sugar is unrelated to heart disease or obesity, and sugar's great.
You know who paid for that study, right?
Yeah. Well, I turned you on to the Y Files. Have you seen that guy at all? Well, check it out. One of the things that he did recently was about scientific studies, and he laid out some facts, and he said 70% of scientific studies in well-accepted journals like JAMA, 70% are funded by parties that have a vested interest in the outcome.
Yeah.
70%.
That's why, and as a nutritionist, when I'm reading studies, and I did the same thing with the COVID vaccines because I'm allergic to so many things myself. The first thing I went to look for in each of the studies that I was reading, and nobody really reads studies. Most people don't do that. It's boring.
It costs
it's difficult.
It's not free.
Most of them are not free.
Right.
But the first thing I look for is who's sponsoring the study, who's paying for it.
Right.
Always follow the money. And in a lot of cases, if the source of the financing is somebody with an obviously vested interest, as in the sugar industry funding the study that was set out to prove not that sugar was not bad for you, those studies were set out to prove that fat was bad for you. That's what started the whole fat-free craze.
Right.
And the way to overcome the lack of fat is to add more sugar.
It's to eat boxes of fat-free cookies.
Yeah. Which are now way more full of sugar.
Right,
and,
of course they are.
And sugar is 8 times more addictive than crack cocaine or heroin. True fact.
So the big offender of doing studies was the tobacco industry.
Yes.
And they were just shameless in their promotion of smoking. And
including doctors.
Including doctors, yeah. It was awful. So in the Y Files, he said, you know, almost everything's behind a paywall, but you can glean enough to figure out who's paying for it, and just know that I apologize, I forgot. I remembered the 70%, but he said something like, when you look at these studies that are funded by interested parties, the vast majority come out positive, favorable to them. And like it was like 80% favorable, 10% neutral, and 10% negative.
And that's why the sugar studies that
Don't
were
quote me
done.
on that.
No, the numbers are all relative in that context, I think. But that's why the sugar industry sponsored studies about the health detriment of fat were so insidious, because they're proving that something that is actually good for you, their goal is to prove that something that's actually good for you is bad for you, so they can sell more of their product that's actually bad for you.
Well, and the unfortunate thing is fat is called fat.
Yeah.
Because I believed it for the majority of my adult life. I believed my problem and my weight problem
Too much fat.
was too much fat in my diet.
No, not enough, probably.
Not enough.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
That's usually I find what the problem is not enough fat in people's diets and not enough protein. Fat and protein are the two biggies.
One of the reasons I like the Y files, because what he does is he takes these sometimes almost conspiracy theory things, and he says, okay, I'm gonna make the case for the people that says this thing is true. And he goes through it, and it's pretty damn he's like, you're listening to him, you're going, holy crap. And then at the end he says, and here's the research I did, and here are the sources. And sometimes he says, well, this guy that I told you said all these things, well, he lied. It's not true. And he debunks the whole thing. But that's not what his channel's about, because sometimes... So the abrupt ending was the GoPro overheated, as usual. It's just an ATV.
Yeah, interesting.
So I didn't turn it back on. We're on our way back. We went to Harbor Freight. Each bought a Dremel, not a Dremel, but what would you call it?
A rotary tool.
A rotary tool. Dremel's a brand new. So Sally has an immediate use for hers, obviously.
Once I get it charged.
I will have a use for it someday. But it's a useful tool to have if you're an RVer, for sure. Especially if you're improving your RV, doing upgrades. Sometimes you need retrofitting. So apparently Las Vegas is still having water issues, because we couldn't even use the restroom at the Harbor Freight because it's closed down.
And according to the gal behind the desk, she said that if they overused water, they got a $10,000 fine. That's what she said.
Ouch. So that continues to be a pretty serious problem in Las Vegas, New Mexico, after that rain. So we were going to go out to lunch, and then we realized if they're still having water problems, they're not going to be probably allowing restaurants to open yet again. And so we thought, well, maybe Mora, and then we're realizing it's Sunday afternoon in Mora. I don't think there are any restaurants open. So we were forced to go home and eat. I still have like pretty much a full pizza from last night. I'm okay.
Yeah, I already had pizza for breakfast. I think I'll make some egg salad. Or
You could have scrambled eggs. Use your rotary tool. See what attachment will do scrambled eggs for you. So anyway, not a very exciting video, but a day in the life of an RVer video.
Boy, is that the truth.
So what's your total cost out of pocket now for the lockout?
Okay, so let's just add it up. So Paul the locksmith, and before you all think that this is a crazy number, he drove 3 hours to come to me and got to my place at 5 after midnight. He came from Colorado to New Mexico, and he had 3 hours of drive to go back. So 6 hours of driving, and he spent roughly 45 minutes to an hour at my place. Made a new key for my cab door and engine, and disassembled and thus re-enabled the deadbolt latch, the deadbolt lock on my door. Disabled the latch part. Watch my video, it'll make more sense. $700 for his work, which I didn't think was bad at all. And then $240 for the new door lock. And now $65 for the Dremel and attachments.
Oh, you bought attachments? Huh?
Yeah. You always need attachments.
You didn't trust what was in the kit, huh?
Nope. Not my first rotary rodeo.
So what does that add up to? Pretty close to $1,000.
$940. Yeah, just about 1,000. Let that be a lesson to you.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything I could have done about it. I mean, I couldn't do anything about the lock breaking, but the lessons that I included in my video are always have a key with you.
And a hide key is a great idea.
And a hide key is a great idea. I should have looked for that in Walmart while we were there.
Oh, you didn't get it the other
No,
day?
they didn't have it because they don't have it. They don't have an automotive service area where they make keys and stuff.
Well, right next to where we were is the auto place.
Oh well.
They would have had them.
Oh well. Hindsight's 20/20.
And I escaped my disaster with Starlink because I manhandled my dish and broke it. Broke the motor, and they're replacing it outside of warranty with a refurbished unit for free, plus giving me a month's free service.
Cool.
That's arriving tomorrow.
And hopefully, my EMS is arriving tomorrow, or maybe Tuesday. I really hope it gets here before I leave. But I talked to Christine when I picked up my other package, and she said she would release it to you since I told her that I was
Okay.
giving you permission to get it.
So EMS is the power protection device.
That plugs into the power pedestal that you then plug your RV into.
And yours got water infiltration.
In Story Lake, in the gully washer. And that's being replaced under warranty as well. No questions asked, no charge.
And you don't have to send the old one back, or do you?
No, I have to disable it so it can't be used or attempted to be used by anybody else though. Their recommended method is to cut the cord from the unit to the plug. But I think your suggestion was, smash the crap out of it.
I have to replace the plug on mine because it got scorched by a bad power pedestal at some point.
Oh, wow. Sure is pretty.
Or Valley. So, anyway, before this overheats again, I'm going to sign off. Thanks for watching the video. See you on the next one. I hope some of this information was useful for you. Take care.
Bye, guys.